Yes, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Instant Reaction on the Cannon Podcast. I am back with with my friend James. How are you doing after that nail butter kind of ending? There's a lot of
Yeah,
stuff to discuss, but definitely one
absolute
of those
chaos,
that you
George.
don't want to have like an ECG next to.
I was so miserable in the first half. Um, I think we started the game okay, but it was not a very Arsenal game. If you felt that it was quite a transitional game. Maybe the lack of Rice was contributing to that. But we had chances. We had some big chances, and in typical Arsenal fashion, we didn't take them, and I think we knew that we were going to rue them. Um, and we got punished in quick succession, and I was just miserable. And I looked on my timeline on Twitter, and there was some horrible takes coming out, some really horrible takes. So I'm glad that the game ended up the way it did, and people can kind of be a little bit more rational going into the rest of the season.
Yeah, just to address, I think we got some comments that we can't see you made on your camera, so maybe turn it on and off, and I'll just go on a little bit of a preamble.
Can
Um,
you see me now?
just black right now, I think.
Let me
But I was seeing
leave
you
and
before.
rejoin, but you can hear me all fine, yeah?
Yeah, I can hear you
Okay,
fine. Yeah, maybe you can leave
I'll
and rejoin.
rejoin.
So the one thing, as I wait for my partner in crime to kind of go through it was a game of two halves, and we were really kind of going through the motions as far as it being a first half of real struggle, and then a second half of something where there was a little bit more to be proud of. And I think one of the biggest frustrations that I saw, you were mentioning some of the takes on the timeline as far as that first half performance. And to be honest, it was valid. Like, I was very angry. I just got to speak as far as the intent in that first half. The first 35 minutes, the entire back line was very apprehensive. And it was that whole thing about us not engaging. There was a lack of drive, and I just really felt that the team was disconnected, not earning the right to play. And we could talk about tactics, structure, things that go wrong, no problem all day. But when you've got that kind of collective mentality that we're not at the races, and there was this vibe to it. I called it a preseason match in terms of vibes, and it really felt like that to start with. And the manner in which we conceded the goals were pretty poor, and so that first half was something that you definitely want to forget, that you definitely want to move on from. But even more so, it was worrying from a mentality standpoint to see that. And then it is worth noting to bookmark it, because I do think, rightly so, Mikel got into them at halftime because there was a complete change in mentality. In the second half, we were a lot better. Some very interesting changes that I would really like to talk about. Anybody that's followed me for a semi-long time knows what I feel like as far as having Gabriel Martinelli at central striker. And it was brilliant to finally see that come into fruition. As far as seeing him with a new role, Trossard a little bit more out wide, and it opened things up. I mean, the runs he was doing was brilliant. We'll talk about a Martinelli section, and we will talk about a Martin Odegaard section, because I think it was directly linked to a change in role as far as what Gabriel Martinelli was able to provide, and what that opened up for what Martin Odegaard could potentially do. And so there was definitely some kind of relationship there. And there's something to like work on as far as looking about what can we change in the future? What can we become? And so from the second half, I must say, go from really doomy, kind of very upset feelings to a little bit more feelings of pride, and felt like there was something for the boys to fight back. And it was the principle as far as really putting that application forward to earning a draw. Of course, the nail-biting finish in terms of them scoring a goal that was then chalked off because of the foul on Miles Lewis Kelly. But in terms of maybe the first half, let's like talk about it. Where do you put your mindset as far as what you want to accept? Is it too much to say that it was completely unacceptable from a mentality standpoint to play that way, despite humans being like emotional, and I'm sure they're feeling dejected? You know what I mean? Like, I want to try to stay balanced as far as what we can expect from a realism standpoint. They've just completed a season that has been one to forget, that has had a huge toll in so many ways. The legs in there, and then they basically put all their eggs into a basket that has crumbled, and they're approaching now a Liverpool who they've had to give a guard of honor for, by the way. And I'm just wondering, like, what's the psychology going into something like that, nothing to play for, and then balancing that with, but regardless, you're here to win. You put your cleats on, you step on the pitch, at least approach it with the right mentality. Like, where do you stand on the whole psychology aspect of that?
I think I was thinking this during the game. By the way, can you see me and can you hear me? Is this all
All good.
okay? Perfect. I think the word that comes to mind is a bit of exasperation. That's the word, right? Um, I think they felt a little bit desperate to prove a point, but because we were away from home, because they were impressive at the start, we were kind of just chasing shadows a little bit, and we didn't have that controlled Arsenal that we often have. So I think we were trying to prove a point, and people were a little bit rattled by the way the game was going. I think it's easy to underestimate. Can you still hear me, George, brother?
I can. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm just concerned about lag. It's easy to underestimate the impact that Gabriel and Declan Rice have on this team mentally. They are two massive, massive leaders on the pitch, and Saliba is still very young. People forget that. I think I've spoken on here before that it's not been awfully helpful, people going with the Saliba and Van Dijk comparisons, because Van Dijk hadn't peaked until he was 28, 29 in his career, perhaps even later. So you do, as a centre back, need time to emotionally mature and
Yeah.
feel out a game like that. And with Gabriel by his side, Saliba looks like completely fearless, can face anything in his way. But games like today, again, he looked a little bit like unsettled, a little bit rattled. And Kivior by his side is kind of the complete opposite of what Gabriel offers. He's more of a timid player. I thought he had a fair game. I don't think he was especially good, but some of the passing he was doing. But it's just the difference in levels. If you want to go to Anfield and compete, you need your Gabriels, you need your Declan Rices. So the fact that we came out with a draw, considering who we had, is pretty impressive, I'd say.
Yeah, and I mean that's going to be a microcosm for the season. And when you actually go through some of the lineups, like if you were to look back and do a reflection of the season, and you said at the big points, at how many points do you have maybe your leaders as far as Gabriel, Rice, William Saliba, Raya, Saka, even Martin Odegaard, despite the form this season, but you're looking from a pure leadership standpoint in terms of the
Havertz as
spot in
well,
the
by the
team.
way. Havertz has
I was
leadership
gonna
qualities.
say he's in that group, right? And when you look at it, it's one of those that I think people say, well, if you just keep saying that the injury comment is an excuse, but I mean at some point it's also just the fact of the situation, you know. And when you're approaching these things, we ultimately just didn't give ourselves rope to hang with because of how we approached the summer, how we approached the January transfer window, and for all the issues of context where we are at this project. It's kind of at a point where I think people are saying, put up or shut up. And it gives me back to this point to get it back to Liverpool, because Liverpool showed us in that first half, by the way, if you want to talk balance of play, we were really poor, but still gave up two massive chances. And Liverpool, with I think something like 3 shots on target or 4 shots in total, with 3 on target, have 2 goals. And that to me says kind of the story as far as their champion campaign had been. Salah, 46 goals and assists in a season, absolutely insane. But to have that consistency, to just go out there and have it as an output debate and just put up or shut up. Like, you can't win on paper and then assume that trophies are going to be given to you, right? And I have had this thing in the last podcast. I said, I don't want to have to squint to see if you can fit, or I don't want to squint to see whether or not things are working. We are at a point where you just got to see, okay, it works. And there's something about Liverpool that a lot of people throughout the season had said, by the way, yeah, they're not great, they're getting by. And that narrative continued all throughout the season until it got to a point of, hold on, let's just see how many points that they've accumulated. Let's see how they've done it. And there is something maybe to be said on this axis of control and chaos for us to lean in a bit to it. Did you feel that in terms of the game specifically, did you feel like there was a little bit more transition efficiency in Arsenal's play in the second half compared to the first? Or did you see any bigger changes that, broadly from a tactical perspective that really changed the idea? Or was it as simple as saying, listen, pick up your pants and remind yourselves who you are? This is not good.
I think a lot of it genuinely is just a mentality thing. We saw that Ødegaard is kind of typifies that completely in the way he played in the second half. It was completely different. He was taking shots. There were still
Yeah.
a few through balls that he didn't make. I can't remember if that first one that Martinelli bent his run. Can't remember if that was in the first or second half. But then he did attempt another one. He attempted one for Calafiori, and that's the difference. It's forcing the issue, and that's what Liverpool are really good at. And it creates momentum in a game, and it creates fear in the opponent, and you cannot quantify that. Whereas Arteta, we will be in a position where we can be on the attack and say, hang on, we don't have the quantitative superiority. And it's like sometimes you just have to take these shots. It's not going to go in, but you're going to get the rebound. And you create fear in the opponent. You change the way they play. And after we got that first goal, Liverpool started playing into our hands. Liverpool really kind of shied away from us, and we grew in confidence. And the way we approached that second half, I am so proud of, by the way, because how easy people were talking. Oh, it's going to be the first time Arsenal conceded more than 2 goals in a game in how long? How easy would it have
Mhm.
been for them to say, "Oh, this is a long day, sack it off"? They stood up, each and every one of them. Players like Martinelli, Ben White, who haven't had the best of seasons. Obviously, Ben White's been injured, but I was really, really impressed with their application specifically. And Ødegaard again, he's been a problem for so long. And in that first half, I was thinking, we've got a serious problem next season. And it wasn't a vintage second half by him, but he stood up and was counted, which is that's the bare minimum that we've been asking for. And that was more of a captain's performance. And hopefully over the summer we can reset and work out what's happened with him. But I'm really glad he came out the way he did.
Well, what we could just directly lead into a conversation. I'll put it to you. Do you want Odegaard or do you want Martinelli? I think they're related. We'll draw them together in the end of it, but I think we'll just stick maybe with Odegaard because you brought it up. So the biggest frustration that I think I have with the Martin Odegaard debate, for example, is we're looking at a player that we know, he knows, the manager, I hope knows, can do better. And I think that's something that we have to say at the top, right? And it hasn't been a good season. But when I start looking about ways that we can evolve, and I do get portrayed a little bit as an Odegaard hater for my criticism on it. But the biggest things that I have critiqued on Martin Odegaard are three major things. And the reason I'm going to say that they were fixed in the second half is because they kind of are related a little bit to the Martinelli and maybe what our front line looks like going forward. But the three things that I've wanted to see are a quicker release in which you have the ball, play the pass that is on, this recycle first mentality. It goes too far. And, he's got the vision for it. He has got brilliant vision. He sees the runs, but he's not brave enough to play the pass enough times. And there's too much of that recycle. So it's release early, be braver in terms of
And
releasing the pass, trust your
just to
technique, mate.
interrupt you, George.
You do have one of the best passing techniques, in the squad. You have the vision to spot the runs. Trust it, play it. And lastly, on the whole ankle injury debate with it, I think that it does him a service to put that narrative out there because you look at the power when he's there and when he's on and when you're on form, these things don't become an issue. You don't talk about the shot technique. You don't talk about Martin Odegaard in this position and he's a little bit better in that position. That for me is like the distance. I think when you talk about the Martin Odegaard debate. And lastly, he deserves more. Like he's the captain. We say he's the leader of the press. We want him to lead in possession just as much as out of possession. And that I think for me, when you start doing those things and don't highlight what does he do in transition, what the player he is. So like for me, that's an unfair criticism. I don't go to that immediately with Martin Odegaard. I just want him to fix and play the things that he does well, knowing what he is and what kind of profile he is as well. So I think when you looked at that second half, I'd love your input about you felt like maybe it was different, but I'm going to come out and say it. I think having a different type of running center forward that's a little bit more intent and aggressive with his runs is something that will help Martin Odegaard. Putting him next to a runner, it has always been something that I felt why I wanted the left move was not because I felt, oh, angles and some of that. It was purely for the fact of we've got a high touch player, Martin Odegaard, who has brilliant passing. We've got a low touch forward who struggles in terms of the touches that he does have 1v1. Let him run, let the passer pass, and they're going to interact brilliantly together. It seems
Mhm.
logical to me.
And I think earlier you mentioned about Ødegaard at Sociedad. They were the passes he was making to Isak. So
Yeah.
no matter, and thankfully, almost all of the strikers we've been linked with are capable of that. I know you're not Gyökeres's biggest fan, but he's definitely capable of doing that. Šeško is, Isak is. So all of those will be on the last line, and it stretches a defense. Even if the pass doesn't happen, it stretches a defense. And the other thing I want to say is the reason it frustrates me so much that he recycles it is because we have such a good rest defense. We have defenders who are immense 1v1. So it doesn't matter if you give the ball away. Klopp used to do this with Liverpool where it didn't matter if Trent crossed the ball 19 times out of 20 and it went to the defender because you will win the ball and the other team will be disrupted. So this is something that has specifically frustrated me. One thing I also think going into next season that Zubimendi will slightly help with Ødegaard is I just think right now his workload is quite a lot. And I think with White in the team, it's reduced a little bit because White covers more ground than Timber. But he's obviously taking the ball in the first phase and then leading the press. And I just think any player, by the time you're getting through all of that, the final action isn't going to be as clean and you're going to be less likely to make a risky pass because you think, fuck, I'm going to have to get all the way back. So hopefully Zubimendi will help us access Ødegaard in central areas, but also take some responsibility off him in the first phase because we'll say, no, Martin, don't worry about this. We've got it here. You make sure you find the pockets because, again, this is something he's capable of and this is what we need from him. And then we will hopefully see his output in the final third increase because this season his numbers are way down. And I there's several factors for that, but I'd say a lot of him dropping into the first third is not helping.
Yeah, and he does strike me as a fairly introspective man in general. And so like it's not as though like I think he's very self-critical. He had to be in order to kind of deal with what he's had to deal with as a journey, you know. So there's no doubt that from my perspective, he's tried to fix things, but he does strike me as somebody that when there is pressure, he looks within as
Yeah.
opposed to like looking without. And so bringing that personality out was a big reason as to why his career took a change in Sociedad. And I think that for this next version of Arsenal and why it's important, by the way, I look at Odegaard and I see a player that is unique. I think it's unique in his ability out of possession, best probably in the squad. And I look at the in possession technique and I'm looking at the in possession impact, and it's not lining up this season. That to me, not output, and I want to be really clear about that. It's not an output thing. It's about your impact, you know, as far as on the game model. Are you able to really start penetrating through with those chances? Really start to give us some of the threat centrally that I think I know because I've seen it with you at Sociedad. I've seen it with you before that you can do and control the things that are within your control and don't worry about the rest. And that's the one thing I think with Martin Odegaard that you want to hopefully see moving on to next season. I'll bring to another section. I would love to have a topic about Nelly in general. This is a player that I think more than anybody in the squad gets probably the biggest environment versus individual spectrum release. And I'm going to start this debate really, really quickly. Not even a debate, but the convo with it is a spectrum. There are two things at play. The individual can accept more responsibility, and the environment can affect your ability to see that individual. And where you
Hmm.
sit on that spectrum about which is a bigger driver, I think has a little bit more to how much trust you might have in the talent, fundamentally. Because there's a lot of players that potentially could get that bag. You could argue Martin Odegaard to a certain extent, for example. We've seen that there's a lot of individual responsibility that he could take, but is the environment necessarily great for him to lead the press and go and lead first phase buildup? Is it ideal for him to be doing so much work? Yada yada. You can make these kind of claims for a lot of players. Where do you sit on, we can even call it touchline Martinelli and central Martinelli? And where do you stand on the player as far as, does a performance like this change your potential use of him? Is this something that, hey, I already knew this, like him being central was something that obviously would help? Do you blame the coach? Like, where are you at with the whole Martinelli conversation?
Part of the problem is that most games we don't come up against teams who play in the way Liverpool did today. Most of the time, teams will sit back and squeeze the space, and more of the space is out wide, which is what he needs. He's a player who thrives in space. So a difficulty is, I don't think he is someone who thrives against low blocks. I just don't think that's his nature. He has always been better against Liverpool. And today, I really did enjoy the way we changed his role. And it's been frustrating that we haven't seen that more. And on what I say about the low blocks, I think that's reductive, obviously, because in every game you will get transition opportunities. And I think we're really bad at using those. So often we do get those transition opportunities, but Martinelli is so deep at left back that he has to run the whole length of the field to get anything from it. So a big thing by allowing him into that central role is you've got him on the last line more often, which is so important because he is our biggest threat in that regard as it stands. And when you've got a player like Trossard in false nine, there's no reason why not to. When you've got Marino, I understand the difficulty. But part of that, Martinelli at his very best was with Jesus, like clear as day, which is why potentially the Gyökeres rumours concern me a little bit, because we're still going to have somewhat of a problem on the left side with Martinelli, if it's Martinelli starting and Gyökeres up front. If it was a Nico Williams, who is more of a 1v1 specialist, more able to hug the touchline, then the move would make more sense. But yeah, I think you can see today we had a sample of him playing both on the touchline and in central spaces, and he looked far better in the central spaces. What do you think?
I think even when we talk about the Jesus, like I look at him at his best, and I've always argued, I felt like we've already seen him at his best centrally. Even when you talk about the Jesus iteration of Arsenal, like when you really look back, right? I mean, Zinchenko was leading a lot of the build-up, so in terms of the middle third on that side, at least, you didn't need a demand for anything. He was supplying that. And between Granit Xhaka and Jesus, the fluid movement out to the left was that he always had at least one option. And I look at this version of Arsenal, and I just fundamentally see, okay, not only is the touchline option something where he's worse from an individual standpoint, but then I look, okay, how many runs have we replaced it with? You could argue Miles Lewis-Skelly has a very good analog, just maybe better defensively than Zinchenko. So from a build-up perspective, I don't think that was majorly lost. Then I go up higher pitch and come down to a striker. Kai Havertz in general, when he's played, by the way, I love Kai Havertz, but he has shown a much better ability to drift right and to go towards that side than he has to the left. So I wouldn't say that even Havertz at his best provided a similar overlap to Jesus. And then I go to the left central mid role, let's call it, whether it's Declan Rice, Marino, or even Kai Havertz. I'm seeing the left central mid operate in a vertical run, just testing the last line themselves,
rather than the curved run.
Exactly. So then I'm thinking to myself, okay, not only have we removed one runner, you've removed two runners from Martinelli's best season, to expect him to also hold width, but also have the same impact in the box, but still hold the width because I need my other central midfielder to be the one to stretch the back line. And I've thought to myself, is that the best use of role regardless? Like, even people that we've had in the midfield, Rice, Marino, and even Kai Havertz to a certain extent, there are games in which I can see it working. But do I want them being the last line runner? I don't know. I want them to have the freedom and contribute in those areas. But I have to have an honest conversation. Like, if our role is to keep that role touchline, then it's never going to be Martinelli, and I'm never going to want to see that. I'm going to want to see him in central areas. So let him be an auxiliary striker. Recruit somebody else to be touchline. Have somebody else to do that. We're dead set on that iteration of our structure. But I think my biggest frustration is why can't we think of other things? We've sat there and we've talked about other things on the right so brilliantly for, I'd say, 3 years now, between the White, the Odegaard, the Saka point. We make so many different iterations. We've got Timber now. We've got Declan Rice there. We've talked about Ethan Waneri possibly being there. We seem to be much more creative in the way we'd like to use spaces on the right than we do on the left. And I think that for me is where I struggle with the whole Martinelli debate. To bring it back to this game really quickly, some of the runs I saw from Gabriel Martinelli have been utterly brilliant. Like the curved runs across the back line are something that we need to make use of, and our ability to spot those runs is something that's not in our game model. And I think that we need more of it. And it's not a Martinelli specific thing. He just happens to be very good at it. But I think those are things that we can use in our next version of Arsenal. When you look at even Gyökeres, the Seskos, yes, the Isaacs, but every single one of those are channel runners that do that. So to
Mhm.
me, you're gonna see a little bit more of that type of movement, and we need to find that type of movement more. So I guess to wrap it up, where I stand on Martinelli, I look at a player who has undoubted ability that I don't need to squint for. And if I can see him making central runs, I actually have no doubt the return to the Martinelli of Jesus's period comes. So
Yep.
when I have a player that I know that's the output, I don't want to sell that. I would like to move positions, be flexible. And the only case I would consider a sale is if I'm going to hear the words, I will be rigid to this only structure of using our team only in this way. And I'll be honest, my question becomes, why are you talking that way, Mikkel? Like, I don't like the logic of that. That becomes very easy to defend against. So there's value there. I don't know if
Just
I'm in the sale
just
category.
George, my closing thoughts on the Martinelli thing is I think what we would see if we did sell him is him excel somewhere else because
Yeah.
they would platform him in a way that uses his talent and everyone would look and think, why where was this Martinelli at Arsenal? And I think
Mhm.
that would be incredibly frustrating because we know full well. Also, as you say, it's really strange because the right Saka is such a unicorn player that you could adjust Martinelli's dynamics and Saka can react in the right way possible, as could the whole right hand side. It's not like he's surrounded. It's not like on the right hand side, Saka has to be inside, so Martinelli has to be on the outside. That doesn't make sense to me. And even like Lewis Skelly or Calafiori at left back, both of those are very competent overlappers. So at times in games, I'd like to see actually rather than keeping them inverted, let's see them overlap and let's see how the opposition defense reacts because we see it more in build up now where Arteta's saying, okay, we're going to build up in slightly different structures, 3-2-2-3, etc., with Lewis Skelly even sometimes finding himself in right centre mid. But we never seem to do that in the final third. It's at times, especially in
Yeah.
the first half today, we were so static in the final third and it makes me want to tear my hair out.
I agree. I agree, mate. And yeah, there's not much more yard to like pull on that, thread in general. I think it was like really confidently said. The big thing is I think you could make an argument for why things fit no matter what, but there's talent there. And I don't think that there's one of those that I question the talent. There is other players, fringe wise, that I may question talent at times. And that probably is a better discussion for the sales. I'm going to quickly go through some of those super chats and we'll try to maybe go through one to one and get your overall thoughts on the game just to get it back to that. But thank you to Ivan Smith. Liverpool needed dodgy refereeing and a red card to scam a point against Arsenal's B team. You love the reffing conversation. It's actually one of your
Me?
favorite topics ever.
Oh, is
No,
it?
I'm
Oh,
saying it
is
sarcastically. Yes, I know how much you hate it. What did you make? Like, we should address it. I mean, there's probably two things, right? There's the whole playing the advantage, letting the shot go, and then pulling it back aspect, and them doing it right on VAR at the end, in which yes, they called a rightful foul. Where do you, maybe you can help with kind of the perspective, because you are a referee yourself and you've done it, you've been
Mhm.
in that shoe, right? Where do you stand on I've been very vocal on the critiquing, so I'm not gonna act like I'm not in front of you, but where do you stand on how difficult that job is? And where do you stand on the impact that that's had on Arsenal's season broadly?
It's a very difficult job, as I say. I've been in a position where I've met a ref before, and some of the refs where it's incredibly challenging, and you will never win every battle. Um, Sometimes, like I really didn't understand why the shot was allowed to happen. Fine, it can also be a yellow card, but they also got the free kick from it, which I didn't
Mhm.
understand why they got every single cake and got to eat from all of them. Um, I thought the referee was fine for the most part today. I also feel there's a risk of barking every time something you feel like something goes against you, and then the time that it is credible, then people go, "Oh, you moan every time." I thought Partey was lucky. I want to say
Mhm.
he escaped the game without a yellow, or he got a yellow at one point, but he made about 5 or 6 challenges. Um, and the ref seemed to warn him to be on his last. He was on his last time several times and got away with it. But yeah, I thought for the most part, and that decision at the end was a big one because they gave it on the field, which is really
Mhm.
important to me because I have a problem with VAR when they don't give these decisions. A little bit like the Anthony Gordon one against Newcastle. Um, was it Gordon who scored the goal in the end? Or was it yeah, it was precisely Gordon. But the on-field referee wasn't sure, so left it to VAR, and VAR said, "We're not sure either," so it was just a grey area. Whereas today, the on-field referee, who is generally good for Arsenal, I think, Anthony Taylor, made the decision, and VAR said, "Yeah, I'm happy with that." Um, in general, this season, yes, I do think we've been shafted. I think, for example, as we all know, the yellow cards for kicking the ball away that got Rice and Trossard sent off and probably cost us 4 points. Um, but to kind of surmise I don't think the reason we didn't win the title was because of referees. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say it's down to that.
Yeah, like you, I think it's a big this whole thing where we try to rank the major factors of why the season have gone to, and for me, it wasn't the biggest reason. I think it's enough to be put on a big reason to
Yeah,
impact
yeah.
because I think the points say that story, and I don't think that you can go next season assuming the same points that we've lost, or even the number of reds or times that we've gone down to 10 men, and be like have a successful season with that as a backdrop. So it's a factor, but I'm with you. I don't think it was the major factor. I think there's another one that was kind of more at play. Really quickly, Mikhail and Saburov, thank you for your super chat. Sorry if I butchered your name pronunciation. Alex normally does these, so I prefer being the second person in these. But thank you for your super chat. Odegaard remembered how to shoot and looked at us. And of course, another individual praise going to Gabby is cooking in the center forward role. He was everywhere from depressed to tornado. Thank you so much, mate. And on the Martinelli conversation from NA23, don't understand the use of Martinelli. Clearly most dangerous centrally, but always forced out wide. Question mark. Also, Marino is bang average in midfield. Yeah, it wasn't the best game from Marino, generally speaking. He definitely took
Where do
some
you
decent.
where do you stand on Marino well, I'm gonna kind of swing the whole way, but where do you stand on Marino's future at Arsenal in general? My question would be, if we were offered 25 million for him, would you take it?
This summer.
Mhm.
I'm gonna be really I don't know if it's controversial, but yes, I would take it. My belief is that the Marino impact on the squad is going to be a lot smaller, and he was always for me a squad option. That
Yeah.
say we were to do this whole transition in which Jorginho was out, Partey was to leave, and we got 25 million for Marino, I would reinvest that into another running 6'8". And for me, the core group becomes Miles, Zubamendi, Declan Rice, and another running 6'8". As far as there being two players, um, sorry, four players for two pivot positions that you can really alternate. And I love a young talent in Lucy Nagume, who I've talked about quite a bit on the channel. Uh, I think the next one has to be a runner. And I look at Marino. I don't see him as a deep midfielder cover at all. Um,
No.
and that for me is the biggest question mark from a Marino long term in the squad, because I think he did brilliantly at center forward for us in a time that we needed an emergency cover. So I want to give him his props there. And he's had a difficult season, right? Like, I do want to say I sympathize with the idea of getting such an early injury rather, going into a new team. But as far as really giving that impact, I don't think he's going to ever give maybe more impact than if we were to recruit a new profile. Like, I look at, Ethan Waneri, and what that could be in midfield. I'd rather invest in that in the final third. And then I look, further back, I'd rather invest in Miles in
Hmm.
midfield, in deep build up. So we've got the talents at both ends, and we need maybe a bridge. So yeah, like, I probably have a controversial. I don't know if it's controversial on the timeline, but I would take the 25 million this summer and reinvest and do it. It's a lot of movement, but I would do it because I do question his long term future. Certainly for me, not much longer than a year or 18 months in potential usage.
Which is also okay. It's okay, like, not every transfer is gonna be flawless. It's okay to say
Yeah,
you didn't make sense, like, 'cause he was a 25 million pound signing. I don't think his wages are significant. That in this market, that is 25 million does not get you that much, especially if we're talking about someone who is ready-made, because I'm sure you have a lot of names who would cost 25 million who would have the potential, but we needed someone who was ready to deliver now. And,
yeah.
Marino, yeah, a lot of things have gone against him, but I just think we need, as stupid as it sounds, someone who loves the football in that position. And Marino isn't that type of guy. Um, he's not very Spanish. He's the least Spanish Spaniard I'd say that I've come across in a while. Um, I don't know. He's just very clumsy, and in the first phase, I don't really want to see him, which is not someone you want in that position. Something that will be nice next season when we have Zubamendi and Rice is that they're both comfortable interchanging. But with Marino, just he's a bit janky, a bit clumsy, and I like the guy. I think he does have some attributes in that position that would be useful. Um, but overall, I think there's just things he's lacking that mean we're never going to be wholly comfortable if Rice isn't playing for Marino to come in. Like, it's just not a seamless transition.
I think the frustrating thing with Marino, though, is we're at a point where to make him work with a sale, we probably need two buys that I'd be comfortable with, which would be A, getting another left back so that I could see Miles in midfield as a genuine option much more. And I probably would say I need like another 6-8 in that group as well. Like, if Marino was to go, Jorginho was to go, Partey was to go, that's three players. Getting just Zubamendi wouldn't be enough. Like, I would want one more player, right? And so it could just be a case of we have so much to do this summer that I think it might be a year too early for the squad to take that hit. But if I'm really being like critical here, a year out, do I see Marino being a crucial cog in the midfield chart? I'm not sure. I would hope, and the reason I'm probably changing a bit more for myself at least is I think Miles and Ethan have progressed so rapidly this season, despite me having such high stocks in my son and his brother. It is a case of they have showed something that I don't think is normal this season, by the way. And I do kind of want to transition this because this is Miles now, who I want to talk about it. Had a difficult night, probably his only majorly difficult night against PSG that I'd say since he come in. Like, that was the first game that I would say, okay, you really struggled. And that's okay. He's a youngster. He shouldn't be churning out perfect 10 out of 10s. But mate, like, he comes back in this game, and for all, Salah's a tough customer. You're not going to get it 100% with Salah ever. So this idea that he got beat one or twice, I'm not buying as having a bad. He generally dealt with Salah very well. Got a yellow card, and there was kind of a bookmark, in my opinion, where with the whole narrative of his emotions, and he's got to control his emotions and everything, and him being maybe a little bit too aggressive, let's call it, and the whole crazy commentary that existed in January. To go back and now receive a yellow card with enough time to play for and get another one, thought he was very mature in the way that he handled Anfield and Salah after a really difficult game for me. Where do you make like the impact of these kind of like Miles, the Ethans, also hasn't really got a game for a while now? What do you make about those two and what they've been able to achieve this season? Because it goes under the radar what Ethan has also achieved in something like 900 minutes and the amount of goals he's got on the pitch. Like, where do you stand on these two and their ability to impact the squad?
And don't even get me started on Dowman, who scored another 2 goals today.
Oh my
That
God,
is
mate. 14 goals and 2
that is
assists, I think
impressive.
it is, in the U18s.
That's outrageous. But yeah, sorry, sticking with Miles and Ethan. I think today kind of also showed that Arteta is gaining trust and respects Miles's mentality, because there was
Yeah,
another game. Was it PSG? There was a game when he was on a yellow card and Arteta took him out the firing line because
yep,
I think it was earlier this season. No, it wasn't PSG.
it
There was a
was.
game in the first half. He was on a yellow card, I think. And Arteta took him off because he said, "That's okay, but I don't want you to get sent off. This is just unnecessary for you." Today, he could have really easily hooked him, but said, "I want to protect you. I'll bring on Calafiori or Tierney instead, and you
Yeah, it
don't have
was
to play the last
PSV.
30." He trusts him today, and he said, "I know that," because also for a young player, you need to learn the line where in youth football, perhaps it wouldn't be a yellow card. In men's football, you make half a trip and players know exactly how to win yellow cards in this game. But Arteta said, no, 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 I'm going to stick with you because I trust you. And not only do I trust you, I need you because you're my best defender against Salah. And yeah, people say, oh, Salah got past him once or twice, or he fouled Salah once or twice. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having to foul a player if it's the right foul. And the fouls that he was making were the right fouls. It wasn't a dangerous situation on the edge of the box. He got a good yellow card, as I say. And just to sum up this whole season, it has been unparalleled. And he's gone from being a midfielder for the youth team to England's starting left back and one of the best left backs in the world. And that's insane, absolutely insane to say. And the Ethan situation is weird to me. Um, I suppose once the red card happened, I thought it was unlikely that he was going to come off for off the ball
Yeah.
reasons. It was a shame that we haven't seen much of him recently. Maybe with Trossard's potential injury and Marino's red card, maybe we'll see him next game. But none of it concerns me, especially he's made 25 appearances in all comps this season. He's literally just turned 18 years old, and he's not Yamal. And I'm not going to apologize that he's not Yamal, because Yamal's a once in a generation player. So temper expectations, that's fine. As long as no reports come out and say anything's happened behind the scenes, then I'm not worried at all. He will get his chance and he will only improve. But what we've seen from him already has been super, super impressive, and just excited as to what's to come.
I agree, mate. I agree, and it's been something I think in our debrief and our reflection on the season that we're going to start to say, like, I think the impact they've had on our transfer plans, our squad building, and our ability to look at this team is genuinely going to be massive. And some of the decisions that we make this summer are 100% not just with them in mind, but them at the forefront of what we see in this Arsenal team. I mean, it's crazy to me. Miles is coming. There's an argument. I would say he's one of the first names on the team sheet right now, and he has been for months, and that's a crazy statement to make. And so yeah, it's been an interesting day. I went from, after the first half, if you were to message and interview George, it was a very angry instant reaction, and then at
Mm.
full time I said, you know what, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that on the individual day that we were able to deal with the red card, close it out, by the way, which I still think was important on a very difficult, difficult day that, it's been a difficult season. And these next two kind of games are going to be difficult watches, I think, just in general, as far as trying to get yourself up for them and trying to see. But the one thing I want to see, and then I'm going to go to you and ask what you would like to see, is I would love to see some experimentation a little bit, where I'd love to see some new things. So we look, okay, yes, it's Martinelli center forward and everything, but I think the one thing that I would like to see is just something new. So we know
Miles in midfield.
Ah, well, you would be reading my timeline to see that. But I don't know. I just want to see some innovation because I tried to. Me and Alex had this conversation every year. We've definitely innovated, and we've been like prevented from innovating this year by hook or by crook through injuries, whatever you want to call it. We didn't really see a big change, and I would like to see at least a small tidbit into what we hope to change next year. It could be a structure thing. It could be a different for a player. It could be Martin Odegaard on the left. It could be Ethan as a false nine. I would like to see something new in this Arsenal with a player that we see a long-term future with. Um, and I would like to see how that looks for maybe 20 minutes of some kind of measure. But what would you like to see closing out the season broadly? Doesn't have to be
I
that. Can be something completely else.
To go into that first, I think Nwaneri false nine is a really interesting suggestion that you mentioned, um, especially with Martinelli on the left because Martinelli can come inside. Ethan, we've seen on the left before, has been just as effective. His crossing is very good, um, and he's probably one of the best finishers at the club. We know what he's like. He can,
Yep.
if he picks up the ball on the edge of the box, that top left corner is always on for him, always on for him, and it will lead to fear in the defenders. What would I like to see for the rest of the season? It's quite difficult from a tactical perspective because today, hence why we haven't done much tactical analysis. Today isn't a day for tactical analysis, a day for kind of mental and emotional analysis, which is we're proud of the boys with how they stood up and were counted in the second half rather than shrunk into themselves. So that is one thing I'd like to see us go out with our chests held high and not go out sadly because Newcastle will come to the Emirates and they are a team full of confidence at the moment. And I do not want to see them come to the Emirates looking confident. I want them to see
Yeah.
like shit, Arsenal are good. Like they've not had the best season, but despite us being, I think we're only 1 point ahead of them. I want to go
Yeah.
into that game and people think actually the table is lying. Newcastle are not as close to Arsenal as the table looks. So just some authority in that game. And Southampton, I don't think we'll get anything from that. I think it'd be nice to see a few of your Nwaneris, Lewis Skelly, etc., doing well. And it would be nice to see Erdegaard left centre mid and Nwaneri right centre mid to see some overlaps. Because with Nwaneri playing right wing, I think that has helped his experience as a right attacking midfield when he comes back into the team because he'll be able to do the overlaps with Saka. But yeah, to go specifically onto the Newcastle, I want to see us stand up and show authority and say, you are coming to our place. And this is why the Emirates is still a fortress, even though the fans will not it's not going to be a great atmosphere. I want us to say, we're going to create the dominance on the pitch and you're not fit to lace our boots. We're streets ahead of you still.
Yeah, mate, I completely agree. And I think before we sign off, I definitely want to run through some of the stats. I was definitely looking for guys, and Scott hasn't thrown them out. So I've had to find a different stats. And I think it's really interesting. Probably one of the biggest things that I just want to see. I won't see it in these next two games, but I would like to see it for next season as we start kind of looking towards the next version of Arsenal is this whole idea about transitions and the shots generated from those transitions in general. So really quickly, we'll go through some of the Mark Stats bots, by the way, which you can find at Mark Stat Bot on the old X. But the XG seemed fairly split as well as slightly more expected threat, I would say, from Liverpool's the 1.78 to 1.31. Our possessions was a little bit more for us. And of course, the major thing that we really only care about here on the Cannon Podcast. This is why, the season hasn't been a failure. It's actually winning on field tilt. But you can see the running XG in terms of what we've been able to do over the match, as well as the threat down there. But I think the stat that I'm most interested in, statistical standpoint, is going to be this kind of stat here, where you look at Liverpool to Arsenal, forcing high turnovers, Arsenal having 7 with only 1 leading to a shot. I believe in PSG, mate, it was 9 high turnovers with only 2 leading to a shot. I've said this a lot, and it's probably a meme at this point. The biggest improvement Arsenal can make in terms terms of their game model is being able to go and say that not only are we the best out of possession team, but we were also one of the best transition teams, and to improve our ratio of high turnovers that lead to quality shots. That to me is something that's kind of unacceptable, to be honest with you, because I think when you look at like the rates of other teams that are boasting these level of high turnovers and the goal output, like, mate, we're operating at something like a 5% efficiency here, in general. And like when you're doing that and other teams are operating at 40 to 50%, it it becomes like that's a big reason. If you improve even 10 to 20% of that, that could really jump your level of goal production in the league. Where do you stand on, like, obviously we need pace in the front, but I'll give you a chance to look over those stats and like what for you is like the biggest punch hit about how Arsenal can like magic pill an improvement, even though there's definitely more. But yeah,
Someone just the primary thing will be someone who will just shoot on sight, and obviously there's got to be smart to it because you don't want someone who's just going to give the ball away. But those chances that we mention are more valuable than the chances against a low block because the majority of chances against a low block is shooting through players. When you're winning the ball from a high turnover, you're often shooting. You're often, if you can create separation and take the ball out of your feet, bang, that's where the chances will come from. And again, as I alluded to earlier, fortunately, every single player that we've been linked with feel like that. Isaac,
yeah,
Gyökeres, and Sesko, they are all get the ball out of your feet and shoot. So it's really obvious why that's the type of player we're looking at. And hopefully that will kind of seep into the rest of the team because they'll see it have success. And as we've said before, it's just pick and choose your battles. But right now, the risk aversion scale, and I think Erdegaard, our captain, is part responsible for this, is way too risk averse. And by playing in a more risky way, we've got the defense to cope with it, but also just everything else will fall, and psychologically you gain the upper hand if a team knows that you're just gonna start shooting, because that's why Liverpool often you'll think like, why are teams defending like this versus Liverpool? Because they know if Salah gets the ball on the edge of the box, he's going to shoot, so you have to double up, which means there's going to be space for McAllister, and McAllister goes in the box and gets a few goals. So just I'm in agreement. It's a desperate need of ours, and probably one of the few stats that we we've maxed out on so many stats. Field, tilt, possession. We're very high on all of them. This is the one stat that we look at it, and there's no way you can twist it. Every way you twist it, it's bad, and that's something that surely we will address in summer, however way possible.
no, mate, don't you see? Like, I am the only one that sees it. The guys that are professionals don't see it, and it's impossible for that to be the case. Yeah, a little bit pedantic, but guys, thank you so much. Thank you for sticking with us. It's not always fun, but you have made this instant reaction very fun, James. Thank you. Can you let the people know kind of where they can find you, just in general?
On twitter.com, or X as they now call it, and AFC James with an X instead of the A. But yeah, thank you for having me on as always. It's a pleasure to be on the channel and speak and listen, absorb your wisdom on the game, George.
Thank you. No, that's too much. You're way too kind. And it's been now somewhat of a regular sub appearance. It's lovely having James on. We hope to do a lot more collaborations with him here on the Cannon Podcast as well, now and in the future. Of course, we love you, the great viewers. And if you love this kind of content, just a quick reminder, you can pop down in the description down below to join us for a 7-day free trial on Patreon. We will absolutely be having the content machine rolling all throughout the summer. Tons of scouted rewatches, some new initiatives. I'm going to try to bring a North American concept called the Coach's Corner into a kind of little new segment over here where I can get really nerdy, maybe with Rohan, and we'll have tons of other stuff. So it is a great time to sign up if you would like to see more content from the Cannon Podcast. But thank you guys all so much, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying.